Xavier's POV the moment we arrived at the infirmary, everything shifted into a blur of urgency and focus. I held Bailey's hand tightly, every fiber of me attuned to her pain and strength. Her breathing was ragged, her face a mixture of fierce determination and vulnerability, and I hated that I couldn't take any of the pain away. "Breathe with me, Bailey," I whispered, leaning close so she could hear me over the contractions. "In and out. You've got this. We're going to meet our babies soon." She nodded, squeezing my hand so hard I thought it might break. The nurses moved around us calmly but efficiently, setting up for the delivery. Dr. Harlow was at her side, her voice steady and soothing, guiding Bailey through each wave of pain. Time warped. Minutes felt like hours, each contraction closer and stronger than the last. I tried to stay composed, but inside I was a storm, terrified and exhilarated all at once. The room was filled with a tense, electric energy, a mix of anticipation and fear. I could feel the weight of responsibility, the need to be strong for Bailey, for our unborn children, for our pack. Thankfully, Penn stepped forward, offering her presence and support, absorbing most of the pain from Bailey, easing some of the tension. I was grateful beyond words. This was a team effort, our wolves. We were all in this together, and that knowledge gave me a sense of strength and unity that I desperately needed. When the moment came for Bailey to push, the room filled with a sacred kind of energy. I felt tears prick my eyes as I watched our daughter's tiny head crown, and then, with one final push, she slipped into the world, a beautiful, perfect being. The nurses worked swiftly, wrapping her in a warm blanket and placing her in Bailey's arms. "Look, Bailey," I said, voice breaking, as the nurses handed her our daughter. "She's here. She's ours." Bailey sobbed, exhausted but radiant, cradling our baby close. The sound of her first cry echoed like a promise in the room, a testament to life and love and the incredible journey we had undertaken. I leaned down, pressing a gentle kiss to Bailey's forehead, feeling the overwhelming rush of emotion threaten to consume me. And then the contractions came again, sharper, signaling our second baby. A nurse took the baby girl, allowing Bailey the space to bunker down and push for the next baby. Bailey's strength was incredible. She pushed with every ounce of her being, her face flushed and determined. I coached her every step, whispering encouragement, wiping sweat from her brow, offering her sips of water. I was her rock, her anchor, and I would be there for her, always. Hours melted away until finally, our son arrived, just as perfect as his sister. The nurses handed him to Bailey, and she held both of them, her eyes filled with tears of joy and exhaustion. I watched her, my heart swelling with love and pride, and I knew that in that moment, I was the luckiest man in the world. Holding both of them, I wept openly. The overwhelming rush of love, relief, and awe crashed over me, leaving me breathless and humbled. I kissed Bailey's forehead, thankful beyond words for her and for these tiny lives that we had brought into the world. Our pack had grown by 2, and my heart had expanded in ways I never imagined. I looked at Bailey, her face glowing with motherhood, and I knew that this was only the beginning. Grant's POV, the waiting room, had become a sanctuary of breathless silence. Nessa sat beside me, her hands fidgeting with the hem of her sweater, her gaze fixed on the sterile white floor tiles like they held the answers to the universe. I'd tried to focus on anything but the tight coil in my chest, the endless ticking clock, the muted hum of fluorescent lights, even the slight sway of the ficus plant in the corner, but nothing could distract me from what was happening just down the hall. Bailey was in labor, and Xavier, my brother in every way that counted, was by her side, facing one of the most terrifying and beautiful moments of his life. My phone buzzed in my pocket for the 5th time in an hour, but I didn't bother checking it. People could wait. Bailey and the babies couldn't. The door creaked open and we all turned. Bailey's parents stepped in first, Monique, composed but clearly holding back a tide of nerves, and Bailey's father, his protective aura pulsing off him in waves. A few seconds later, Caroline and Xavier's father, Perry, arrived. Caroline gave me a quick once-over, her eyes sharp despite her smile. She always noticed everything. Everyone settled in quietly, murmuring greetings, asking how long it had been. I answered what I could. Still no updates. The silence returned like a thick blanket, broken only by the occasional rustle of someone shifting in their seat. And then we heard the footsteps. The delivery nurse stepped through the doors, clutching a tablet, her cheeks slightly flushed. All of us stood at once, as if drawn by instinct. She smiled, bright and proud. Alpha Xavier and Luna Bailey welcomed 2 healthy babies just minutes ago. A boy and a girl. The room froze for half a second. Then, Praise the moon goddess. Monique cried, hands flying to her mouth. Caroline gasped and gripped her husband's arm, her eyes misting over. Nessa let out a shaky breath beside me. May the moon goddess bless the twins, she whispered in awe. I felt my knees go weak with relief. A tight knot in my gut loosened, as if it had been holding together every emotion I didn't have space to process. I scrubbed my hands over my face and laughed softly. Those babies couldn't have better parents. The nurse smiled wider. Both are doing well. Luna Bailey is tired but in good spirits. The alpha asked that you all be allowed to visit shortly. We just need to finish monitoring her vitals and getting the babies settled. We can wait, Bailey's father said, voice gruff. Take all the time they need. Caroline turned to Monique, beaming. Can you believe it? Grandchildren. A boy and a girl. I've already started crocheting matching onesies, Monique said with mock seriousness. Pink and blue. And gray. In case they hate color. The laughter rolled through the room like sunlight breaking through clouds. After so much tension, it felt like we were finally breathing again. I looked over at Nessa. She had tears in her eyes but didn't try to hide them. I gently touched her elbow, and she looked at me, startled but soft. They're here, I said more to myself than to her. She nodded. They're here. And suddenly the world felt a little brighter. A little warmer. Not because the wait was over, but because life in its most raw and magical form had arrived. 2 tiny wolves. Bailey's POV, my body felt like it had just run 100 miles barefoot uphill. Twice. Every inch of me ached, but none of it mattered. Not the sweat clinging to my skin. Not the weight of exhaustion in my bones. Not even the dull ache in my back or the heavy sting in my limbs. Because there they were. 2 impossibly small, perfect souls, one cradled in each arm, warm and new and real. My babies, our babies. I looked down at them through blurry, tear-filled eyes. The little girl on my left had my curls already, tight, dark coils soft as clouds. Her skin glowed warm golden brown, and when she blinked, I caught the briefest flash of gray rimmed in gold. Her brother, snuggled to my right side, had Xavier's jawline already. I kid you not. That baby was ready to alpha his way out of the womb. His cry had been deeper, stronger. Penn called it his first declaration. They were perfect. And I could barely breathe from the love clawing its way out of my chest. Xavier sat at the edge of the bed, one hand on my leg, the other stroking our daughter's little back with reverent awe. He hadn't stopped staring, not once. You did this, he whispered, voice hoarse with emotion. I blinked slowly. I didn't do it alone. Your runaway dash out the door was a critical part of the birth plan. I said teasingly. He cracked a smile through his tears. But even his laugh trembled. Bailey. His voice broke. When I turned to look at him, I saw it. The proud, overwhelmed father. The devoted, love-struck mate. The powerful alpha who would burn down the world for the 3 of us without hesitation. He reached out and carefully cupped our son's head, then leaned forward to press a kiss to my temple. I closed my eyes and breathed him in, his warmth, his strength, the raw truth of his love vibrating between every heartbeat. I've never been more proud, he whispered into my skin. Of you. Of them. Of this life we built together. Pen purred inside me, her energy soft and content. He's ours, she whispered in my head. They're ours. Our pack. Our future. A quiet moment passed, then another. And then I said the thing that had been clinging to my chest since I first felt their kicks. They're never going to know what it's like to be alone. Xavier looked up sharply, his eyes locking with mine. They'll never grow up wondering where they belong, I continued, a tear sliding down my cheek. They'll always have us. This pack. This love. He didn't speak, just leaned in and kissed me, gentle and slow, like he was afraid we'd break from anything more intense. I promise you, he said against my lips. Whatever comes, we protect them. We protect each other. I nodded, unable to speak, only able to cling to this moment. This perfect, powerful, once-in-a-lifetime moment. The room was quiet except for the occasional soft gurgle from our newborns and the muted buzz of medical equipment humming nearby. But inside me was a symphony. Of love. Of legacy. Of life born from something wild and beautiful and real. I held our children tighter, let Xavier's hand rest over mine, and finally, let myself exhale the breath I'd been holding since the very beginning. This was everything I didn't know I needed. I could hear them before I saw them. The hallway outside the room filled with the rustle of coats, whispered arguments about whether now was a good time, and Caroline hissing at someone to lower their voice unless they wanted to be snapped at by a woman who just gave birth to twins. I smirked from my bed. Xavier was pacing by the bassinets like a man guarding treasure, but when he heard the commotion, he rolled his eyes and opened the door with exaggerated patience. "Come in," he said, exasperated but smiling. In they came. First, my mom, looking like she was trying not to cry. She had a huge box in her arms that smelled suspiciously like baked goods. Of course, her love language had always been sugar and butter. Next was Caroline, who walked in with regal composure and a designer tote stuffed with what I knew were definitely not hospital-approved baby shoes. Perry followed her, holding a camera like he was about to document the birth of royalty. Honestly, he wasn't far off. Then came my dad, who walked in slow and quiet, like if he moved too fast the moment might shatter. I felt his eyes go right to me, then to the bassinets, and then back again. "Oh my stars," he whispered. I'd barely gotten out a "Hi, Daddy," before he crossed the room and wrapped me in the gentlest, most protective hug I've ever received. "You're incredible," he said, brushing a kiss to my forehead. "You brought them into the world safely. That's all I could have ever hoped for." And just like that, I was crying again. Because, apparently, post-birth hormones are relentless and don't care that I was trying to keep it together in front of the whole squad. Caroline was already hovering over the bassinets, cooing like she'd been waiting for this day since Xavier was born. "Oh, look at this face. Xavier, she has your stubborn little frown already." "She's not frowning," I murmured. "She is judging," Perry chimed in. "And I respect that." Xavier laughed under his breath, standing behind me with a hand on my shoulder, pride radiating off him like heat. Monique shuffled over next with a tearful smile and a prayer under her breath, whispering blessings in my grandmother's tongue as she touched each baby's forehead with reverence. "You will always be surrounded by love," she whispered. "And you will always know who you are." Nessa arrived just after, her expression soft and lit up with wonder. She didn't speak right away. She just moved slowly toward the babies, as if afraid to disturb the sacredness of the moment. I gave her a smile. "Come closer. You're part of this chaos, too." She laughed quietly and reached down to gently touch the baby blanket tucked under our son's chin. "They're beautiful, Luna. Truly. They look like tiny potatoes," Xavier muttered behind me. I elbowed him. "The most attractive potatoes in all of werewolf kind." He leaned down and kissed my temple. No arguments there. Then Grant slipped into the room quietly, like he was unsure whether he belonged in a moment this soft. But when he saw the twins, something in his expression changed, an easing of the tightness that had haunted him for weeks. He stepped beside Nessa, and they both stood there for a long while, saying nothing, just breathing it in. "Two new lives," he murmured. "Two new futures." I could tell something in him was healing. Maybe slowly, but healing. Caroline pulled out her phone and insisted on photos, several dozen, at least. Monique passed out fresh croissants from the box she'd brought. Perry declared himself the baby name advisor, to which I threatened to name the twins Peanut and Pickle just to make him sweat. And my dad, he sat beside my bed, one baby in each arm, rocking slightly like he was cradling the entire world. It was a full room. Xavier knelt beside me again, our fingers intertwining. "They're going to grow up so loved," he whispered. "And spoiled," I replied, leaning into him. Xavier's POV, the moon hovered above the Silver Ridge pack like a silent guardian, full, luminous, and watching. It cast its soft light across the gathering grounds, gilding the trees in silver and washing over every face in the crowd. The night air was still and reverent, holding its breath for the moment that was about to unfold. Tonight, I would name my children before the pack. Tonight, I would speak their names into the legacy of Silver Ridge. The blessing circle had been prepared at the base of the great oak, our sacred place for generations. Wolves and humans stood in solemn lines, each holding a lit candle, the flames flickering like stars across the ground. Bailey stood beside me, radiant even under the weight of exhaustion. She wore a long, pale gown that shimmered like moonlight over snow. The twins were nestled in her arms, swaddled in white cloth embroidered with the crest of Silver Ridge, a symbol of protection, of lineage, of home. Grant stood behind us, stoic but proud. Nessa was beside Bailey, acting as a ceremonial witness. Our parents flanked the outer edge of the circle, a wall of warmth and strength that reminded me of everything we'd endured to reach this moment. As alpha, it was my right and my honor to give the first howl. I stepped into the center of the circle, lifting my face to the sky. With the full force of my wolf and the unfiltered truth of my heart, I howled. It wasn't just a sound, it was a declaration. A promise, a reverent echo that carried through the forest and told the world, "They are here. They are ours." Bailey stepped forward then, holding both twins as I extended my arms. She handed them to me one by one, her fingers lingering briefly on mine, anchoring me. I took our daughter first. She blinked up at me, a tiny goddess wrapped in peace and fire. This child, I began, my voice strong and clear, is the daughter of Alpha Xavier and Luna Bailey. She is born of honor, love, and fire. She carries the blood of leaders, the spirit of warriors, and the strength of 2 Alpha bloodlines. I raised her gently, letting the moonlight kiss her skin. She shall be known as Ariel Rose Paxton, Lioness of the Moonlight. May she rise with grace and lead with courage. The pack responded with a low chorus of howls, soft, melodic, and filled with ancient power. I handed Ariel back to Bailey and took our son into my arms. His eyes, my eyes, blinked back at me with calm intensity. His wolf already stirred beneath his skin. I felt it, quiet, watching, waiting. This child, I said, my voice thickening with emotion, is the son of Alpha Xavier and Luna Bailey. He is born of strength, wisdom, and unshakable loyalty. He carries the blood of protectors and power alike. I held him high, letting the moon see him fully. He shall be known as Malachi Storm Paxton, warrior of the wind and flame. May his heart be kind and his path be fearless. The howls rose again, louder this time, full of promise and pride. The pack embraced them both with that sacred sound. Bailey wept softly beside me, her hand wrapped around my arm as we stood there, our family complete, our names carved into the fabric of Silver Ridge forever. I kissed her temple. We stood under the moon, no longer just Alpha and Luna, not even just Xavier and Bailey, we were parents. Bailey's POV, the pack had long since dispersed, their final howls echoing into the forest like a lullaby carried by wind. The sacred clearing now sat in tranquil silence, moonlight still stretched across the grass in wide silvery bands. It was just us now, our little family cocooned in the stillness of the Alpha House nursery. Xavier had insisted on preparing the room himself weeks ago. He built the cribs with his own hands, sanded them down until they were smooth as polished stone, lined them with the softest quilts his mother could find. A calming palette of whites, silvers, and warm wood tones created a nest that felt like a dream suspended in moonlight. I sat in the oversized rocking chair, both twins curled against my chest, skin still warm from the world's first embrace. Ariel on the left, Malachi on the right. Their breathing was rhythmic and soft, a hush-hush of tiny lungs still learning the cadence of life. Xavier was on the floor at my feet, his knees bent, one of his big hands wrapped gently around Ariel's foot, the other brushing over Malachi's tiny fingers. His eyes, those intense storm-gray eyes, had been misted over for a while now. "They're perfect," he said softly, his voice hoarse. "Bailey, I don't know how I'll ever repay you." I smiled, stroking Malachi's curls. "Repay me? Xavier. We made them together." He looked up at me then, something fierce and tender in his expression. "But you carried them. You kept them safe. You gave them life. You gave me this life." I bent down and kissed his forehead, letting my lips linger there for a heartbeat. There was a long silence, not heavy, just full. Pens stirred in my chest, humming softly in sync with the baby's. She was completely at peace for the first time in what felt like an eternity. And I felt whole. "Did you ever imagine this?" I whispered, looking down at the little miracles cradled in my arms. Xavier gave a quiet laugh, leaning his head against my thigh. "No. I imagined 1,000 futures. None of them looked this good." Ariel made a small cooing sound and kicked her foot softly against Xavier's chest. He let out a soft laugh. "She's already claiming territory. She's her mother's daughter," I said with a smirk. Malachi stirred, scrunching his face like he was about to complain. I leaned my head back and rocked gently, whispering a soft lullaby my mother used to sing. Xavier stood, leaned down, and took Ariel from my arms, holding her against his bare chest as he walked the room slowly. He looked so natural like that. Shirtless, his hair slightly disheveled, a thin silver chain around his neck catching the moonlight. But his voice, it was gentle thunder. "Shoo. It's all right, little lioness," he murmured. "Daddy's got you." I could have melted right there. He paused near the crib and just swayed, humming low, rhythm matching my heartbeat. I turned to Malachi. "Your sister is already getting rocked by a 6'4" teddy bear," I whispered. "You want in on that action?" Malachi made a gurgling sound, almost like a laugh, and I stood, walking over to join Xavier. We placed the twins in their cribs side by side. Ariel's tiny hand reached out instinctively and wrapped around Malachi's fingers. Xavier and I watched them in silence. "That," I said, resting my head on his shoulder. is love. Pure and simple. He wrapped an arm around my waist and kissed the top of my head. That is everything. We stood there a while longer, just watching, listening to the soft breath of new life. Grant's POV. The air in the Alpha house was different now. Softer, sweeter. I didn't know if it was the scent of newborns, warm milk, or the light hum of lullabies drifting from the nursery, but whatever it was, it clung to the walls like magic. After the birth, I gave Xavier and Bailey space. I stayed on the edges, watching, guarding, quietly ensuring everything ran smoothly. I never said it aloud, but their joy made the ache in my chest a little more bearable. Seeing Xavier cradling his daughter with tears in his eyes, watching Bailey whisper to her son like the moon made him just for her, it stirred something in me. Something. Longing. And then there was Nessa. It was late afternoon. The sun stretched long and golden across the floorboards as I passed by the open door to the nursery. I wasn't trying to intrude, just delivering some paperwork Xavier had asked for, but I paused when I saw her inside. Nessa was sitting in the rocking chair, a soft swaddle across her lap, little Ariel nestled against her chest. Malachi was in the bassinet beside them, fast asleep, his tiny fingers curled in a dream. I hadn't seen her like that before. So tender. She was humming some soft, wordless tune that wrapped around the room like a spell. Her hand gently stroked Ariel's back, her body swaying with a rhythm as old as time. Her long hair was pulled into a loose braid that hung over one shoulder, a few strands falling in her face. She looked tired, but there was light in her eyes I couldn't look away from. Nessa hadn't noticed me. Not yet. So I watched, and something stirred. Not just in my heart, but in Leo. Deep in my chest, my wolf lifted his head, ears perked. Not like before when he growled in rejection, confused by Maribel's absence. This was something quieter, curious, reverent. She would make a good mother, Leo said. My throat tightened that I didn't answer him. Because I already knew. And that's what scared me most. Nessa shifted Ariel slightly and glanced toward the door, as if sensing someone there. Our eyes met. Her smile was small. They're perfect, aren't they? I nodded, stepping inside. Yeah, they are. She didn't rise, just continued to cradle the baby, rocking gently. Luna Bailey's finally asleep. Took 2 cups of chamomile tea and threats from her mother to get her to rest. I chuckled, settling into the chair across from her. Sounds about right. Silence settled between us. She trusts you, I said after a moment. Nessa glanced down at Ariel. Who? Luna Bailey or the baby? Both, I replied. Her laugh was soft and tired. I love them. All of them. I looked at her, really looked. And I realized she meant it. Not just loyalty. Not just duty. Love, pure, simple, steady. That same love she gave freely to those around her, Bailey, Xavier, the pack. Me. And for the first time since I said goodbye to Maribel under that moonlit path, I felt warmth creep into the hollow parts of me. Not to replace what was lost, but maybe to make space for what could be found. Leo stirred again. She sees you, he whispered. Even when you didn't see her. I swallowed hard. Nessa looked up, brushing a curl away from her face. You okay? I nodded slowly. Yeah, I think I'm getting there. Xavier's POV. There are few things that strike fear into the hearts of Silver Ridge warriors. A full-scale rogue attack? No problem. Midnight patrol in winter with no boots? Bring it on. Facing Luna Bailey on the training field 2 months postpartum? Absolute terror. I knew something was off the second I heard the muffled thuds of bodies hitting the dirt and the distant cries of what sounded suspiciously like, I yield. I rounded the last corner toward the field with Grant beside me. Nessa stood at the outskirts of the training ground, as usual, eyes on everything and nothing. What in the hell is happening out here? I asked, already bracing myself. Kale, who looked way too pleased with herself, grinned like a fox. Oh, I may have incentivized the morning training. My eyes narrowed. Define incentivized. I told the warriors and new recruits that if any of them could beat the Luna in a spar, they'd be excused from training for the rest of the day. I blinked, then looked out onto the battlefield, because that's what it was at this point. 6 elite warriors lay crumpled in various states of dismay. One was clutching his ankle, another was nursing his ribs. A third lay face down in the dirt, moaning softly like he'd just seen the afterlife. And in the middle of it all stood my wife, Bailey, dressed in combat leggings and a loose tank that read postpartum, not powerless. Not a drop of sweat on her. Her curls were tied back in a messy ponytail, and her hands were planted firmly on her hips. If this was her idea of easing back in, the pack might need to take up yoga instead. I sighed and dragged a hand down my face. She had twins. 2 months ago. She's fine, Kale said, beaming. And the recruits are learning valuable life lessons. Like humility. I glanced at the line of terrified recruits who hadn't even been called yet. They looked like they were questioning every decision that led them to this moment. Grant was chuckling beside me. I'll give it to her. She's still got it. She's going to break someone, I muttered. That's the point, Kale said cheerfully. Also, she's doing this for her mental health. Said she wants to feel strong again. I looked back at my mate just as she executed a textbook takedown on a man twice her size and then dusted off her hands like it was nothing. She caught my eye and grinned. Good morning, my alpha. This won't take long. Then winked. Grant snorted beside me, and even Nessa smiled softly at the banter. Then I noticed something else, something subtler than Bailey tossing elite warriors like rag dolls. Grant's attention drifted sideways, toward Nessa, and she not noticing. She was staring at Bailey in awe. It was a glance, a long, heart-level, quiet kind of look that carried more than words ever could. I didn't say anything, just watched as Grant stepped a little closer, not enough to invade her space, but enough to brush his arm gently against hers. She stiffened for a fraction of a second, then relaxed. Whatever it was between them, it wasn't loud. Maybe grief and confusion were finally giving way to something else. I glanced toward the battlefield again, just in time to watch another poor soul go flying through the air. Bailey clapped once and called out, "Next!" A fresh-faced recruit whimpered. Grant grinned, clearly enjoying this more than he should. We should really consider sending her to the front lines next time. No, I deadpanned. Because if she gets hurt, I'll lose my mind and possibly destroy 3 continents. Fair. Kale was still smiling like a cat in the sun. She's happy. She's in her element. She's going to kill someone, I said again, only half joking. Bailey looked my way, winked, and shouted, "Hey, Alpha, remember when you left me behind while I was in labor?" Several warriors gasped. Grant nearly choked. "Oh, goddess," I mumbled. Nessa, the traitor, snorted softly. "Kale," she cackled. I looked skyward. "Why do you hate me?" But despite the chaos, the bruises, the snide remarks at my expense, my chest swelled with love. For this ridiculous, beautiful mess we called life. And as I stole one last glance between Grant and Nessa, still side by side, still not speaking, I knew something had shifted. Bailey's POV, I swear, there's something deeply satisfying about watching grown, tough warriors writhe in defeat. It's like a secret joy that only a Luna who's survived twins and a pack full of alphas can fully appreciate. Pen and I were perched on a fallen log, snack stash in hand, laughing our heads off as warriors crumpled and groaned like overcooked sausages on the training field. One poor recruit was still clutching his ribs and muttering, "Luna Bailey is basically a weapon of mass destruction." Pen cackled. If she ever got mad, half of this pack would be in intensive care. I grinned, shoving a piece of chocolate into my mouth. I'm just glad Xavier's here to save their dignity. Speaking of which, I caught sight of Xavier pacing like a nervous panther. He was wringing his hands and muttering something about too much warrior energy, and when did my wife become a UFC champion? I nudged Pen, watch this. Xavier marched up to Nessa, looking exasperated. Where are the twins? Nessa, calm as a still lake, replied, Madame Caroline and Madame Monique have them. Spoiling them rotten as usual. Xavier chuckled. Well, that explains the peace and quiet in the house. I'm still waiting for the screaming to start. Before either of them could continue, I interrupted with my best boss lady tone. Nessa, your turn. Time to show those recruits what you've got. Xavier and Grant both froze. Grant's brow furrowed. Wait, what? Nessa fighting? I turned and made my way toward the edge of the training ground where the recruits and warriors had gathered, some still rubbing bruises, others looking like they wanted to crawl into a hole. I let them stew a moment before dropping the bomb. You guys might want to sit down for this. Grant and Xavier exchanged confused glances. Since the kidnapping, I explained, Nessa has been training under Kale. Hardcore. She wanted to get stronger to better protect me, and even more so when I got pregnant again. Grant's jaw dropped. Xavier blinked in surprise. Yep, I said with a sly grin. Turns out our quiet Omega is basically a secret weapon. So, are you ready to see what she's been hiding? Nessa smirked, grabbed her training gloves, and cracked her knuckles. Grant shook his head, chuckling in disbelief. Well, I guess you won't be the only one putting warriors on the ground. Xavier sighed. Why did I marry you again? Pen cackled. Because you like a little chaos, Alpha. And with that, Nessa stepped into the circle, ready to remind the pack that strength comes in many forms, and sometimes the quietest warriors pack the hardest punch. Grant's POV, I thought I'd seen it all. Warriors twice my size wrestled to the ground. Rogue attacks, elite sparring tournaments. Hell, I've personally taken down 4 wolves in a single fight. But nothing prepared me for what I was witnessing on the training field today. Nessa. Quiet, polite, sweet Nessa, moving like a damn storm given form. She was sparring against 2 new recruits, both of them solid, built like walking refrigerators, but the moment the match began, she was gone. Not literally, but that's how it felt. She ducked under one strike, pivoted on her heel, and drove an open palm straight into one recruit's sternum. The guy stumbled back, gasping for breath like she'd stolen it from his lungs. Before the other could even react, she twisted, dodged his jab, and swept his legs with a clean kick that sent him sprawling into the dirt. Xavier whistled low from beside me, arms crossed over his chest. Damn, even he looked impressed. Kale stood off to the side, smug as ever. I told you. Girl trains like it's a religion. I couldn't even form a sentence. My mouth had gone dry and Leo was pacing in my head like a caged animal. Look at her, he growled reverently. So strong. So focused. And beautiful. How did we miss this? I didn't know. All I knew was that my chest felt tight. Not with panic, not with fear, but something else, something. Primal. Kale raised 2 fingers. Let's spice it up. 2 more recruits stepped into the sparring circle. I blinked. Wait, 4-on-1? Nessa didn't even flinch. She rolled her shoulders once, exhaled slowly, and adjusted her stance. Then the chaos began. The 4 men charged, some more hesitant than others, but determined to prove themselves. One came at her from the front, arms wide, trying to grapple. She leaned back, narrowly avoiding his arms, and struck his ribs with the side of her foot. He folded instantly. Another lunged from the left. She dropped, rolled, and sprang to her feet behind him before delivering a clean jab to his kidneys that made him yelp and stumble. The remaining 2 tried to corner her together. One threw a flurry of punches. Nessa blocked 3, ducked the 4th, and countered with a spinning back kick that knocked him into the dirt. The last one, clearly rethinking his life choices, charged anyway. She sidestepped and used his momentum to flip him onto his back with a thud so loud it echoed across the field. Sweat beaded lightly at her brow, but she wasn't even winded. Her stance was still perfect. Her eyes focused. Her breath steady. I couldn't take my eyes off her. Leo growled again. We need to make her ours. I didn't answer. Because I didn't know what that meant anymore. Not yet. Xavier shook his head in awe. She's incredible. I just nodded, barely breathing. How had I never seen this side of her? How had I overlooked the fire, the strength, the fury behind her quiet demeanor? She moved like she'd been born to fight, born to protect. Every motion was precise and intentional, like art in motion. It wasn't just skill. It was grace. And it shook something loose in me. She stepped out of the ring, brushing her hands together as she wiped off the dust. Her cheeks were flushed, eyes glowing with adrenaline. When she looked up and saw me watching her, something unspoken passed between us. I swallowed hard, rooted to the ground in awe. Nessa's POV, my lungs were steady. My stance solid. Sweat slid down my temple, and I barely noticed. Every muscle in my body hummed, my adrenaline still thrumming from the fight. I wasn't just proud of how I handled the 4 recruits. I was proud of why I trained this hard in the first place. To protect. To be useful. To never feel helpless again. Kale gave me a sharp nod of approval from the sidelines, and I returned it with a small bow of my head. But when I turned to look at the group watching, my gaze snagged on him. Beta Grant. His eyes locked on me like I was the only person on the field. Like he hadn't seen me until just now. Something about the way he looked at me. Heat spread across my cheeks before I could stop it. That same unsettling warmth from the kitchen weeks ago surged through me again, but this time it wasn't born from sadness or confusion. It was fire. Energy. Awareness. He wasn't just impressed. He was captivated. It rattled me. Shook something loose in my chest I had carefully tucked away. For weeks I'd been forcing distance between us. Focusing on my duties. Keeping my emotions neatly boxed up. But now those walls felt fragile. Transparent. I didn't look back at him. I couldn't. If I did, I was afraid of what I'd see. What I'd feel. I bent down to tie my shoe instead. Classic deflection. Kale bumped my shoulder. You fought well, Nessa. Really well. I gave a noncommittal shrug. Thank you. My voice cracked. After the fight, as everyone dispersed and Bailey declared snack time with a ridiculous cheer, I lingered on the edge of the sparring ring. I caught one last glance at Grant as he spoke with Xavier. There was something soft about his expression, gentle, like he was trying to solve a puzzle he hadn't realized he'd been holding all this time. And for the first time since Mary Bell, I didn't feel like I was just a shadow. I felt seen. Grant's POV, the courtyard buzzed with quiet movement. Car doors creaking open, trunks slamming shut, the hum of goodbyes caught in half-smiles and quick glances. Caroline and Perry were getting ready to head back to Blackstone Ridge, their things packed neatly in 2 large SUVs. The other Omegas, including Mary Bell, were helping load the last of the supplies and bags with practiced grace. Caroline had Malachi tucked into her arms like she was cradling the most sacred treasure in the realm. His tiny fist was gripping the collar of her blouse, and she was blinking fast, trying to keep the tears from falling. But they came anyway. I stood beside her, watching her rock him gently, murmuring something soft and grandmotherly in his ear. Perry had one of the baby blankets slung over his shoulder and was looking on with the kind of patience only a lifelong mate could master, equal parts love and exasperation. She's not giving him up easily, I muttered to Xavier as we stood near the steps of the pack house. No kidding, Xavier said, arms crossed over his chest. Watch this. Right on cue, Caroline walked toward the SUV with Malachi still in her arms. I'm just going to sit with him for a moment, she said sweetly, already settling herself in the passenger seat, the baby snuggled against her. Mom, Xavier warned, his tone laced with both amusement and mild exasperation. You have to give him back. Caroline blinked innocently. I am giving him back. After I buckle him in. Perry gave a theatrical sigh and muttered under his breath. For the love of the goddess, woman, give the baby back. Caroline pouted like she'd just been told she couldn't adopt a puppy. Still, she kissed Malachi's head, whispered something to him, and finally, reluctantly, handed him back to Bailey, who stood beside Nessa with Ariel cradled against her shoulder. You better come visit, Caroline warned, wagging a finger at Bailey. I'm not going to be away from these babies for long, understood? We will, I promise, Xavier said, then added with a knowing smirk, because I don't need the wrath of Grandma. Caroline smiled at that, wiping her eyes again. Perry pulled her in with one arm, pressing a kiss to her temple before they walked toward their SUV. And then, there was her, Mary Bell. She was helping the last of the Omega pack with luggage, organizing and straightening things as she always did, quiet, efficient, and selfless. Her red curls were pulled into a loose bun, and a few strands had fallen into her eyes from the warm breeze that danced across the courtyard. She was already halfway into the vehicle when I made my way toward her. She paused at the open door, sensing me there before I even spoke. I gently reached out and tucked one of those curls behind her ear. Hey, I said, voice low. She turned, her eyes warm but shadowed. Hi, I just wanted to say goodbye. And thank you. She gave me a small smile, one that trembled at the corners. I should be thanking you, she replied softly. I leaned forward and kissed her forehead, my hand lingering against her cheek, just a second too long. Safe travels, Mary Bell, I whispered. She gave a small nod and stepped into the SUV, the door closing quietly behind her. The moment it did, it felt like something inside me shifted, like an entire chapter had sealed itself shut with the soft click of that door. I stood there, watching the vehicle drive off, a hollow ache blooming in my chest. Nessa stood beside Bailey, bouncing Ariel gently and laughing at something Xavier had said. The wind caught her curls and the edge of her sleeve. And when she looked at me, really looked, I saw something steady there. Something quiet, something warm. Leo stirred within me, his voice thoughtful. The fated bond is gone. But maybe it's for the best. And for the first time since Mary Bell and I said goodbye, I didn't feel lost. Not anymore. Grant's POV, it had been nearly 2 months since Xavier's parents returned to Blackstone Ridge, and yet, sleep still evaded me. The moonlight stretched across my ceiling, silver and cold, like a restless thought that refused to settle. I turned on my side, then my back, then finally sat up, running a hand down my face with a sigh. This is ridiculous, I muttered. You think? Leo growled inside my head, restless and annoyed. You've brooded long enough. Go claim her. Mate with her. I blinked. Leo. Subtlety is not your best suit. There's nothing subtle about what we want, he huffed. You're being weak. You wait and wait. She's ours. Stop stalling. I sighed again. We can't just jump into that, Leo. Nessa's not a prize to be won. We need to build something slowly. She's different. She deserves more than instinct. Leo growled but didn't argue. Instead, he went quiet, pacing in the back of my mind like a wolf held just outside the hunt. I got out of bed, pulled on a soft cotton shirt, and made my way downstairs. The kitchen was dimly lit, quiet, and warm with the faint scent of cinnamon still lingering from the evening's desserts. I opened one of the cabinets and pulled down the tin of herbal tea that Nessa often brewed for Bailey. Chamomile with lemon and spearmint. I made 2 cups. I didn't think. I just moved. I stood outside her door, the hallway so quiet I could hear the clock ticking from the study at the far end. I raised my knuckles and knocked softly. There was a brief pause, a whisper of motion behind the door. Then it creaked open. Nessa stood there in an oversized sleep shirt, her curls falling beautifully around her shoulders, and her eyes soft with curiosity. She blinked once, then smiled faintly. "Did I wake you?" I asked, suddenly aware of how ridiculous this must look, me standing at her door in the middle of the night with tea. She shook her head. "No, I was going over the twins' schedule for tomorrow. Bailey has her postpartum strength training with Kale at noon, and I need to adjust Ariel's feedings accordingly." Her voice was gentle, warm. "What's all this?" I lifted the cups, couldn't sleep. Figured you might not be either. Thought tea might help. Her brows lifted in amused surprise, but she opened the door wider. "Come in." Her room smelled faintly of vanilla and fresh linen. A stack of folded laundry rested on a nearby chair, and an open planner sat on the side table. She moved a throw pillow from the couch near the window and gestured for me to sit. We did. Side by side, quiet for a moment, sipping the hot tea as the moonlight spilled through the curtain. She was the one who broke the silence. "Why'd you come to me tonight, Beta?" I turned the cup in my hands. "I guess. I wanted to talk to you. Not the assistant to the Luna. Not the trainer in hiding. Just you." She smiled into her cup. "Well, lucky you. You caught me when I'm only Nessa." I chuckled. "Do you ever sleep?" She snorted. "Sometimes. But I'm more of a night owl. Always have been. You must have been that annoying kid who stayed up reading while everyone else was passed out." "Guilty," she said with a grin. "A beat past. Do you have family in the pack?" She nodded. "I do. My older sister, actually. You know her." My brow furrowed. "Really? Who?" "She's the Omega cook. The one who bakes those ridiculous cherry cobblers you try to pass off as homemade." I choked on my tea. "That's your sister?" Nessa laughed, eyes crinkling with delight. "Yes. Why didn't you ever tell me that?" She raised an eyebrow. "You never asked." "Oof. Fair. Touché," I murmured, rubbing the back of my neck. "Now I feel like an idiot." She leaned back slightly, resting her arm along the couch. "Don't. You're not the only one who doesn't see everything right away." I looked at her then. Really looked. She was relaxed now, shoulders down, the usual tension she wore like armor slowly falling away. I wanted to know more. She looked so beautiful in that oversized shirt, barely covering her thighs. She sat legs crossed so you can see the muscle tone in her legs. I wondered how they would feel under my touch. "How do you even find the time to train with Kale?" I asked, trying to rein my thoughts back in. "You're with Bailey most of the day." Nessa sipped her tea and looked out the window. "I train early mornings. 4 days a week with Kale. The other 3 I run. Through the woods. Before anyone else wakes." "You've been running alone through the woods at dawn?" She nodded. "It's peaceful. And it makes me feel strong." I was quiet for a moment, then confessed. "I always assumed you didn't have a wolf. I never saw you shift." She looked at me with a faint smile. "I do. Her name is Leslie." I blinked. "Leslie seems very quiet." "She chooses to be," Nessa replied with a smirk. "She's slender, fast, and confident. Doesn't say much, but when she does, it's usually sarcastic. And yes, she's real." Leo stirred, intrigued. I set my cup down. "Would you run with me sometime? On your morning days?" Nessa tilted her head, surprised. "You'd be willing to wake up that early? For you?" I met her eyes. "Yes." She bit her lip, then nodded slowly. "Okay. But I warn you, I'm fast." I leaned back into the couch, smiling. "We'll see about that." The silence that followed was warm. Comfortable. Familiar. Something shifted between us, not sudden or sharp, but like a curtain pulling back, letting a new kind of light in. Maybe Leo was right. Maybe I'd waited long enough. But this felt right. Nessa's POV, I hadn't expected him. It was well past midnight, and I was sitting on the floor beside my bed with my planner in my lap and a pen tapping against my lip. Tomorrow was already filled with feedings, training blocks, nap times, Bailey's strength session with Kale, and Xavier's check-in meetings. I liked knowing what to expect. I liked the rhythm of it all. So when the soft knock came at my door, I froze. And when I opened it to find Grant, not in uniform, not polished, just a man with 2 cups of tea and tired eyes, something inside me fluttered. We drank tea on my couch. Sat side by side in silence at first, but it wasn't awkward. It was something else. Something calmer. Deeper. I caught myself studying him more than once. The way his jaw clenched when he was thinking. The way his voice softened when he asked about my family. And when he seemed shocked that my sister was the cook. The look on his face almost made me laugh. "You never asked," I'd teased. And it was true. Not to blame him, but he'd never seen me as more than Bailey's right hand. And now he looked at me like he was finally seeing me. He asked to run with me. Not because he had to. Not because it was protocol, but because he wanted to. My heart hadn't stopped racing since he left. Now it was morning and the sun was barely up. I stood in the twins' nursery, checking the bottles I'd prepped earlier, but I could barely focus. Every time I tried to concentrate, my mind kept replaying his voice. "For you?" "Yes." It shouldn't mean as much as it did. But it did. Grant, beta of the Silver Ridge pack. Once claimed by a fated mate he had to painfully let go. Now sitting beside me in the quiet of the night, asking to learn who I was. Asking to run beside me. Asking for me. I ran my fingers across the spine of my planner. Did he know what that night meant to me? Did he know how many times I had imagined having a moment like that with him, just one, back when I used to dream about things I thought I'd never have? I didn't know where this path was leading, but I knew one thing: it had begun. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid to see where it might go. Grant's POV. It was still dark out when I stepped out of the Alpha house, the crisp morning air cooling my skin as Leo stirred eagerly in my mind. "She's waiting," he rumbled. "Let's run." Nessa stood just beyond the edge of the forest, her silhouette lit by the soft silver glow of the rising moon. She didn't speak, just smiled faintly and nodded. Then she shifted. Leslie, slender, fast, beautiful. I stood there, stunned. Leo went still in my chest, then began to pace like a caged beast. "Run with her," he growled, voice thick with awe. "Look at her. Look at our mate." I shifted mid-step, bones cracking, fur bursting from skin as I transformed into Leo. And then we were off. Leslie was everything Nessa said she was. Swift, nimble, almost ghost-like. Her paws barely made a sound on the forest floor. She darted between trees, through low-hanging branches, over fallen logs with an ease that made her seem untouchable. I struggled at first to match her speed, but Leo was determined. We kept pace as we chased her scent, pine and lavender, and it spurred Leo forward like a drug. The wind whipped past us, the earth firm beneath our paws, the moon high above watching silently as 2 wolves danced through the wilderness. By the time we slowed near the Alpha house, both of us were panting, but Leslie. She shifted first. There she was, Nessa, standing in the early morning light, sweat glistening on her skin, her breathing steady. Naked and radiant and utterly unashamed. My breath caught. I'd never seen her like this before. Not just unclothed, but bare. Unhidden. Glorious. She caught my stare and flushed, brushing a strand of damp hair behind her ear. "What?" she asked, voice soft. I didn't even think before I said it. "You're beautiful. In human and in wolf form. Your body is exquisite." Her blush deepened. I should have looked away, but I couldn't. Leo was silent now, but the satisfaction in his presence hummed loud in my head. She cleared her throat and reached for the robe she'd left by the door. "Thanks," she said quietly. We parted there. Or rather, almost parted. I made it 10 steps down the hall before Leo snapped. "Go back. Now." This time I listened. I turned around. I knocked on her door, heartbeat pounding. When she opened it, still nude, robe in hand but not yet worn. Her eyes widened in surprise. "Beta?" "Aye." My breath caught. Her scent overwhelmed me again. That same mix of pine, lavender, and something warm, earthy, and uniquely her. "I don't know if it's the way you smell right now or the way you look. But I need to do this." I kissed her. Hard. Deep. Passionate. Her arms wrapped around my neck, her legs around my waist as I lifted her. The door clicked shut behind us as we stumbled into her room. I wasn't thinking anymore. I was feeling. Her skin beneath my hands. Her mouth on mine. The heat of her, the sound of her breathing, the way she whispered my name like it was a secret only she was allowed to know. Her lips tasted like mint, and something sweeter I couldn't place, maybe the tea, maybe just her. I carried her across the room, her body pressed tightly to mine, and gently laid her down onto the soft sheets of her bed. The light from the moon caught the golden undertones of her skin, and for a moment, I just looked at her, completely captivated. Nessa gazed up at me with a mix of vulnerability and desire that made my chest ache. I brushed her cheek with the back of my hand, memorizing the shape of her mouth, the slope of her collarbone, the soft rise and fall of her chest. Every inch of her was a revelation, a secret I was finally allowed to uncover. "I've never seen you like this," I whispered, voice low and reverent. She smiled faintly, eyes shimmering. "You never looked before." That hit deeper than I expected. It was a truth I couldn't deny, a regret I couldn't ignore. But now I was here and I wasn't going anywhere. "I'm looking now," I murmured. "I'm not stopping." She pulled me down to her, and the kiss we shared was slower now, more deliberate. Our lips moved in a dance of discovery, a promise of what was to come. My hands explored her, learning the planes of her body, every curve and soft line. She arched into my touch, her breath hitching as I trailed kisses down her throat, across her shoulder, then lower, savoring the taste of her skin, the scent of her desire. Every sound she made stirred something primal in me. Leo purred in approval, content to simply be present in this moment. There was no rush, only need. Only reverence that I took my time, exploring every inch of her, committing her to memory. Her hands roamed my body, her touch both tentative and urgent, a reflection of the emotions swirling between us. She wrapped her arms around my shoulders, fingers threading through my hair. "Grant." My name on her lips sent a shiver down my spine, a spark of electricity that ignited every nerve ending. I captured her mouth in another kiss, deeper this time, more intense. Our tongues danced, exploring, claiming, reaffirming our connection. We moved together like something sacred, heat and heart, rhythm and tenderness. Her body fit against mine like we were made for each other. Like every moment leading up to this had been leading me to her. I could feel her hot and ready against me, and it was all I could do to hold back, to take it slow. When I finally sheathed myself inside her, it was with a sense of coming home, of finding a place I never knew I was looking for. She was tight, warm, perfect, and I wanted to savor every second of it. I could feel every inch of her, her walls clenching around me. "I can't believe it took me so long to finally make you mine," I groaned, my voice hoarse with effort. "So soft. So warm." She wrapped her legs around me, arching her hips towards me. My hips thrusting against hers, my hands gripping her hips, holding her in place as I pounded into her. She met me thrust for thrust, the room filled with the sounds of our pleasure, raw and uninhibited. "Grant," she cried out. I didn't hold back, my desire taking over. "Nessa," I groaned, my voice hoarse, strained. "You feel so good. So perfect. I'm so close. I can't hold back any longer." Her nails digging into my back as she came. The way she clenched down on me, I came undone. I could feel her milking me, her body shuddering with the aftermath of her own pleasure. We stayed like that for a while, our bodies slick with sweat, our hearts pounding in sync, our breaths slowly returning to normal. Eventually, I rolled off her, pulling her into my embrace, our bodies still slick with sweat, our hearts still pounding. I pressed a kiss to her forehead, my heart swelling with love for this quiet, loving woman. Later that morning, I was sitting at the dining room table, sipping a second cup of coffee while reviewing the day's itinerary on my tablet. The house was quiet except for the soft clinking of utensils and the occasional babble of a distant baby. I was trying not to think about last night. Correction, I was failing miserably at not thinking about last night. Then I heard footsteps descending the stairs. Nessa, she walked into the room in a soft blue blouse and black leggings, her hair still slightly damp from a quick shower. Her eyes met mine, and there it was. That blush. The same one that spread across her cheeks last night when I'd kissed her senseless. She hesitated for a heartbeat at the threshold, then offered a shy smile. "Good morning, Beta Grant," she said politely, her voice just above a whisper. I raised an eyebrow, setting my coffee cup down and letting my gaze linger on her just a little longer than appropriate. "Beta Grant," I repeated, my voice low and teasing. I didn't say anything else, but the look of desire on my face was unmistakable. Her blush deepened until it spread to the tips of her ears. Before anything more could be said, Xavier and Bailey walked in, each holding one of the twins. Ariel squealed when she saw Nessa and reached her chubby arms out in delight. Nessa smiled and tickled her tiny fingers as Bailey made her way to the table. Xavier pulled out a chair for Bailey, and she sat down with a groan of relief. This one's got my hips and my appetite, she joked, bouncing Ariel on her knee. Xavier sat beside her and glanced between Nessa and me. His sharp alpha eyes narrowed slightly, catching the electricity that still lingered between us. He didn't say anything aloud, but I saw the glint of amusement in his eyes as he lifted his coffee. He mind-linked Bailey. I think these two finally mated. Bailey grinned quietly, eyes still fixed on Ariel. I think you're right. Out loud, Bailey suddenly said, You know, I could have sworn I heard some moaning and howling last night. Anyone else hear that? My heart stopped. Nessa's head shot up, eyes wide, and her face turned a violent shade of crimson. No, she blurted. Didn't hear anything. Nope, I echoed too quickly, coughing into my mug. Nothing. Bailey shrugged. Must have dreamt it then. Xavier hid his chuckle behind his coffee mug, but I saw the corners of his mouth twitching. I should get going, I said, standing abruptly. Busy day. Lots to do. Bailey tilted her head and smirked. Yeah, better get to it, Beta. You look like you didn't get much sleep. Xavier choked on his coffee, finally letting the laughter out. Nessa was left at the table, beet red, staring at the food on her plate like it held the secrets of the universe. I didn't even bother trying to hide the grin tugging at my lips as I turned and walked out. It was going to be a long and very interesting day. Nessa's POV, there were 3 things I was absolutely sure of. 1. Grant and I were terrible at being discreet. 2. Alpha Xavier was not the type to ignore the obvious. 3. The Luna had absolutely zero filter, and even less chill when it came to matters of the heart. So when Bailey and I strolled into the Alpha's office that afternoon, bringing the twins, I should have known we were walking straight into a public roasting. Alpha Xavier was on the couch with a laptop perched on one knee, pretending to work, but clearly only interested in blowing raspberries at his daughter. Grant was leaning against the bookshelf, trying to look broody and important, but he lit up like a torch the moment I entered the room. We tried to act normal. Really tried. Bailey placed Malachi in Alpha Xavier's lap, who immediately snuggled into his chest like a content pup. Ariel cooed and drooled onto my shoulder. Everyone was settling into a peaceful silence, until Bailey opened her mouth. So, she said casually, smoothing Ariel's curls, when exactly are Grant and Nessa going to stop sneaking around like horny teenagers and make this relationship official? Ariel chose that moment to let out a wet raspberry. I wanted to disappear into her tiny burp cloth. The room went silent. Grant visibly choked on air. Alpha Xavier blinked once, then laughed so hard he had to toss his laptop aside and brace Malachi from flopping off his lap. I beg your pardon? Grant said, voice cracking like a middle schooler. Bailey rolled her eyes so hard I thought she would see the inside of her skull. Don't play dumb, Grant. You're sneakier than a squirrel hoarding stolen pastries. Do you honestly think we haven't noticed all the late-night hallway creeping? Or how you two can't look each other in the eye without blushing like ripened tomatoes on a hot summer day? I gasped, Grant sputtered. Alpha Xavier sipped his coffee with the smuggest expression on his face, clearly enjoying the show. I was wondering the same thing, Bailey, he said with a smirk. They've been sneaking around for weeks, as if we wouldn't notice. Right. It's time for it to be out in the open. We're all adults here, Bailey shot back, but I figured if I said it out loud these two would finally stop acting like 2 flustered squirrels in mating season. Grant looked at me. I looked to the ceiling. Ariel let out another gurgle, clearly mocking my life choices. Bailey kept going. Look, all I'm saying is, I would like to start calling Nessa by her rightful title. Beta, not Omega. So unless you're planning to write sonnets about her for another 6 months while staring longingly across the courtyard, maybe get a move on. Grant looked like he was buffering. I muttered, O moon goddess. If the floor could open up and swallow me whole, that would be a great gift from the moon goddess. Bailey held up a hand. No pressure. I mean, unless you count me casually pressuring you in front of your Alpha, Luna, and 2 literal babies. Grant finally managed a breath. I think we were just. Bailey said, smirking like a satisfied cat. You were just what? Washing each other's hair by candlelight for purely platonic reasons. Even Xavier couldn't hold in his laughter anymore. He was doubled over, wheezing. I need a snack, I whispered, cheeks blazing, wishing a breakfast biscuit would rise from the floor and save me. Malachi cooed in agreement, clearly on Team Bailey. I mean it, Bailey said, softer now, her teasing smile warming. You two are good together. Everyone sees it. We just want you to stop hiding from it. Life's too short for that. I looked over at Grant. His eyes found mine, serious now. A flicker of something unspoken passed between us, stronger than the embarrassment, deeper than the blushes. Maybe it was time. And maybe, just maybe, the Luna needed a hobby that didn't involve blowing up my love life like a gender reveal gone wrong. Grant's POV, the morning air was crisp and cool, the dew still clinging to the grass as Nessa and I returned from one of our early runs. Her wolf, Leslie, was faster than ever, darting between trees with a grace and confidence that stole my breath every time. Watching her in her element, strong, agile, fierce, made it impossible not to admire everything about her. When we shifted back at the main house entrance, her laugh echoed in the stillness as she wiped sweat from her brow, her bare skin glowing in the early morning light. It made it even harder to focus on what I had to say. But I knew I needed to. Once we changed and had a quick breakfast, I asked her to walk with me to the private garden tucked behind the Alpha house. The one rarely used except for private council talks. Or moments like this. We sat on a carved stone bench beneath the blooming wisteria, silence lingering between us before I finally spoke. Bailey was right, I said. Nessa's head snapped up, her expression cautious. About what? That you snore louder than an alpha bear. I gave her a soft laugh but shook my head. About us. Her humor faded instantly, replaced with wariness. Grant. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees. As much fun as the passion has been, stolen kisses, secret moments, it's time I stopped treating this like something temporary. I want to do the right thing. She folded her hands in her lap, brows drawn together. Grant, you don't have to feel obligated just because Bailey put you on the spot. Don't do this because you feel pressured or exposed. I turned toward her, gently reaching for her hand. This isn't about Bailey. Or Xavier. Or anyone else. Her lips parted, but I kept going. This is about what's been weighing on me for a long time now. I want you, Nessa. Not in secret. Not in the shadows. I want you by my side in the light. My equal. My mate. My beta. Her breath hitched. You want me to be your mate? She asked, voice barely above a whisper. You want to? Claim me. I want everything with you, I said. Not just the fire. I want the quiet mornings and the chaotic ones. I want the hard days, the triumphs, the fights, the making up after them. I want pups with your smile and your fire. I want to see you roll your eyes at me when I forget to wipe my paws off at the door. She let out a soft laugh as her eyes glistened. I never thought I'd be someone a beta would choose. I brought her hand to my lips. I didn't choose you, Nessa. My heart did. My wolf did. I just finally caught up. She looked at me, blinking through her tears. I always wondered if you'd ever really see me. If all the ways I loved you from a distance meant anything. They did. And I see you now, I said. I see you clearer than I've ever seen anyone. Tears rolled down her cheeks, and she nodded slowly. Then yes. Yes to all of it. I want the chaos. The peace. The pups. You. We returned to my room, hearts pounding with a shared urgency. The moment the door shut, I pulled her into my arms, our lips meeting in a kiss that deepened with every second. Her hands tangled in my hair as I backed her toward the bed. Clothes fell away in soft rustles. Our bodies met with a hunger we could no longer temper. The sunlight filtered in through the window, silvering her skin as she arched beneath me. In the middle of our passion, I leaned down, my lips grazing the soft spot between her shoulder and neck. My wolf, Leo, pushed forward, urging me. I sank my canines gently into her skin, marking her with a bond that sealed us for life. She gasped then, with her nails raking lightly across my back, she flipped us, straddling me. Her eyes burned with the same need, the same devotion. She leaned forward and bit down on the crook of my shoulder, and I felt it, our bond locking into place. A rush of warmth flooded through both of us. We held each other afterward, breathless, entangled in the sheets and in each other. I pressed a kiss to her forehead and whispered, You're mine now, Nessa. And I'm yours. Forever. She smiled against my chest, her fingers tracing lazy patterns on my skin. I always was, Grant, even when you didn't see it. The late morning air was warm, a late spring breeze whispering through the windows of the Alpha house as Nessa and I walked hand in hand toward the main sitting room. We could barely contain our joy, grinning like two teenagers who realized we were each other's crush. The euphoria of finally becoming one. The bond between us pulsed quietly, like a hum of energy under my skin, and every time I looked at her, it was as if I was seeing her all over again for the first time. She was mine. Xavier and Bailey were already there. Bailey was sprawled across the chaise lounge with Ariel napping on her chest, while Xavier bounced a wide-eyed Malachi gently in his arms, whispering something that made the little boy grin in that gummy way that melted hearts. When we entered the room, Bailey raised her head and grinned knowingly. Xavier didn't even try to hide the smirk forming on his face. Well, 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 Bailey said, adjusting Ariel and eyeing us like a cat who just caught a canary feather. Look who finally stopped sneaking around like two high schoolers breaking curfew. Nessa chuckled, cheeks flushing, but didn't let go of my hand. We were not sneaking. Oh, honey, Bailey said with a snort. The walls aren't that thick. We heard the howling. In stereo. Xavier raised his mug in mock toast. It was a lovely duet. Quite moving, really. I groaned. Nessa looked like she wanted to sink into the floor. Okay, we get it. You heard things. Congrats. Can we move past the embarrassment and get to the part where you support us? Bailey waved her free hand. Oh, please. I've been shipping this romance arc since chapter 60. I'm just thrilled I get to call her Beta Nessa now. That has such a ring to it. Doesn't it, Xavier? Xavier smiled warmly, more serious now. It really does. And you both have our full support. More than that, our respect. You didn't rush. You took your time, built something real, and made your decision on your own terms. I nodded, squeezing Nessa's hand gently. We wanted it to be right. Not because of pressure or expectation. Bailey sat up straighter, shifting Ariel into Xavier's arms. Then let's celebrate. Tonight. Family dinner. No excuses. The kitchen omegas have been itching for a reason to go overboard. You mean you want an excuse to raid the pantry? Xavier said dryly. Bailey grinned. Exactly. Nessa looked at me, then back at our Alpha and Luna. Thank you. For everything. Your friendship, your patience. Your bad jokes. Bailey gasped in mock offense. My jokes are amazing. Xavier just laughed, setting both twins down in their bassinet. He walked over to us and placed a firm hand on my shoulder, then looked at Nessa with a nod of approval. You make a strong team. I couldn't be happier for you both. The pack would learn soon. But for now, this moment with our closest friends, with family, was everything. Nessa turned into my side, resting her head against my shoulder. Nessa's POV waking up in Grant's arms still felt like a dream. His chest rose and fell with the rhythm of sleep, his warmth seeping into my back as he kept an arm wrapped around my waist. The soft rays of early morning sun filtered through the curtains, casting golden light across our tangled sheets. This was our new rhythm, peaceful, steady, and filled with the quiet joy of knowing we no longer had to hide. We'd become mates not just in ceremony, but in every small way that mattered. Mornings filled with sleepy kisses and herbal tea. Early morning runs through the forest where our wolves, Leo and Leslie, chased each other in playful sprints. Evenings shared in comfortable silence or laughter over a shared plate of something we both claimed to hate, but always finished anyway. I smiled to myself as Grant shifted behind me, nuzzling his face into the crook of my neck. You smell like pine and trouble, he mumbled, his voice thick with sleep. I chuckled softly. And you smell like warm blankets and smug satisfaction. I am satisfied, he said, pulling me tighter into his arms. You're mine. The bond between us hummed like a living thread, pulsing with our emotions. Every time he touched me, a warmth bloomed in my chest. It wasn't just lust or passion, it was comfort. After a while, we slipped out of bed and moved through our morning routine like we'd been doing it for years. Grant brewed tea, strong, earthy hibiscus for me, mint for him. He always pretended to hate how much I liked herbs, but I'd caught him sneaking sips more than once. We walked hand in hand through the garden behind the Alpha house, enjoying the hush before the pack grounds fully woke. A few early risers waved as we passed, and I could see the glint of curiosity in their eyes. News had spread quickly about our official union, and while most were congratulatory, some simply observed. I didn't mind. I was no longer a shadow behind the Luna. I was now Grant's partner, his equal. That afternoon, Xavier and Bailey announced a formal ceremony to recognize my new role as female beta of Silver Ridge. I nearly cried when I heard. All those years of quiet servitude, of hiding my worth behind others, it was all changing now. The pack gathered in the central clearing just as the sun began to dip low, casting golden light across the open field. Bailey stood tall and proud beside Xavier, holding Ariel in her arms while Xavier held Malachi. Kale stood nearby, her stance sharp with pride. Calvin and Monique were both beaming, their eyes shimmering with emotion. When my name was called, I walked forward on shaking legs. Grant was already there, standing tall in ceremonial robes, his eyes never leaving mine. Xavier's voice rang out, calm and strong. Today we recognize not only a bond forged by love, but a partnership built by strength, loyalty, and resilience. Nessa, you have stood by this pack, by our Luna, and now by our Beta. Today, you are no longer our beloved Omega. You are our female Beta. A chorus of howls broke the silence as Grant stepped forward, placed his hands on my shoulders, and whispered, "You were always meant for this." He turned me to face the pack and kissed my temple as a sign of both affection and respect. Bailey stepped forward and placed a gold chain with the Beta insignia around my neck. "Now everyone knows what I've always known," she whispered. "You are powerful. You are worthy." The rest of the evening passed in a blur of embraces, congratulations, and celebration. The scent of roasted meats and sweet mead lingered in the air as the pack danced under the stars. Later that evening, after the clearing had quieted and the fire burned low, Grant and I returned to our room. A fresh bouquet of wildflowers waited for me, lavender, daisies, and sprigs of thyme. A note was tucked beneath the stems in Grant's blocky handwriting. "Thank you for never giving up on me." Tears welled in my eyes. I thought of all the years I'd loved him silently. All the small glances, the stolen moments of admiration. All the times I believed he'd never look my way. And now, this was our life. It was more than I had ever dreamed. It was real. Bailey's POV as promised, we loaded up the SUV for the long-awaited trip to Damien's pack to visit Xavier's parents. Bringing the twins for their first official visit. Ariel and Malachi were 6 months old now, full of giggles, drool, and chubby-cheeked charm. The car was packed with Grant and Xavier in the front, the twins in the middle row. Nessa and I were in the back row. Normally, Nessa would chat with me about the day's plans or quietly dote on the twins. But today, not a word. Her fingers were neatly folded in her lap, her gaze fixed on the passing pine-lined road, worry etched into the tight lines of her mouth. Grant, being Grant, noticed immediately. I saw the subtle shift in his brow, and then the way his eyes glazed slightly. He was using the mate bond. "Are you okay?" he mind-linked her. Nessa seemed to flinch, like she forgot he could do that now. After a pause, she replied with the classic deflector. "I'm fine." Grant didn't buy it, not for a second, but he didn't press. I pretended not to notice the quiet tension. Even Xavier gave me a sideways glance. I gave him a small shake of my head. We'd talk about it later. I had a pretty good guess what was bothering Nessa. This would be the first time she'd see Mary Belle again, since Grant broke the mate bond. Despite Grant's love and loyalty to Nessa, that kind of history leaves shadows. And Nessa, my sweet, strong, secretly insecure Nessa, couldn't stop wondering. Would Grant regret it? Would seeing Mary Belle bring back something he'd buried? I could practically hear the thoughts rattling in her skull. We pulled up the long gravel path to Damien's pack house. The lodge-style home looked grand and inviting, its large wooden beams wrapped in flowering vines. The front door swung open before the SUV even came to a full stop. Caroline burst out of the doorway like a woman on a mission. "My grandbabies!" She squealed, running full speed toward us with more agility than someone her age should have. Xavier chuckled, stepping out and opening the back passenger door. "I got Malachi," Grant said quickly, unbuckling the baby carrier while I scooped up Ariel. Caroline nearly snatched Malachi from his arms, her eyes already glossy with tears. "Oh my moon goddess," she cooed. "Look at these cheeks. He's even more handsome than his papa." Xavier rolled his eyes with a smile. "Don't tell him that. His ego's already insufferable." Caroline turned to me. "And look at this princess. Ariel, darling, come to your nana." I handed her over, and Caroline bounced between the two babies like a kid in a candy store. Behind her, Perry stepped out more slowly, chuckling under his breath. "You gonna leave us any grandbabies to hold?" he teased. I laughed. "You're going to have to pry them from her kung fu grip." As everyone gathered and the laughter flowed, I noticed Nessa still standing at the car, her posture a little stiff, her eyes occasionally flicking toward the group of Omegas helping unload bags near the back. Mary Belle was among them. Grant glanced at Nessa, then at Mary Belle, then back at Nessa. "I'll get the rest of the bags," he said aloud, clearly for Nessa's benefit. He touched her back gently, a quick, familiar motion, and walked toward the Omegas. Nessa nodded slightly, but her eyes didn't follow him. She stayed beside me and quietly reached for Ariel when Caroline finally allowed a handoff. I saw the way Nessa held my daughter close, as if grounding herself with the baby's warmth. Whatever fears she had, she wasn't voicing them. But I could see them. And so could Grant. Grant's POV Nessa was unusually quiet during the ride, and the silence between us had weight. I could feel her tension thrumming beneath her skin. Her fingers fidgeted slightly, her jaw tight. When I reached through the bond to ask if she was okay, her answer didn't ring true. "I'm fine." She wasn't. and I hated that I didn't know how to help ease the ache I could feel pulsing from her chest into mine. We arrived at Blackstone Ridge Pack, and just as we stepped out, Marcus showed up like clockwork to help unload the bags. I was thankful. His timing spared me from more silence and let me shift focus. Damien, his wife, Eliana, and their little daughter, Isabel, greeted us at the doorway. The moment the 6-year-old spotted Bailey, she sprinted like a mini warrior. "Auntie Bailey, you're finally here," she shouted with glee. Her dark curls bounced as she launched herself into Bailey's legs. Bailey knelt, grinning. "Well, look at you. You've gotten so tall. I've been practicing the fighting moves you showed me. I beat all the boys in my class." Eliana chuckled. "She's been getting in trouble at school for putting the boys in arm locks." Bailey gasped with faux outrage. "Did they deserve it?" The little girl nodded emphatically. "Yes." "Then I don't see the problem," Bailey said, tossing a wink at Isabel. Damien laughed. "This one's gonna have her own army by the time she's 10. Bailey placed her hands on the girl's shoulders. "So, tell me, what move did you use to win the last fight?" "I used the sweep and pounce combo," the little girl beamed. "And then I sat on him until he cried." Bailey clapped. "That's my girl." Eliana sighed dramatically. "If she scares all the boys away, who's going to marry her?" The girl crossed her arms, chin up. "I don't want to marry any boys. They're weak. I want someone strong like Daddy." The adults roared with laughter. "You hear that, Xavier?" Bailey said. "We should start training the twins now, so they can be like their cousin Isabel." As the teasing and chatter continued, I caught sight of Nessa standing just inside the entryway, still holding Ariel with such gentleness. Her lips curved in a smile as she watched, but there was still that tightness in her eyes. And I made a silent promise to myself. Before this trip was over, I would find out what was weighing on her heart. The warmth and celebration inside the pack house filled every room, but Nessa's silence followed me like a shadow. After dinner, with laughter still echoing down the halls and the scent of warm bread and cinnamon still thick in the air, we slipped away to our guest room. She was quiet again, removing her sweater slowly, avoiding my gaze. I could feel the ache she was holding inside, and could taste it through the bond we now shared. "Nessa," I said softly, closing the door behind me. "Please talk to me." She hesitated, then turned toward the bed but didn't sit. "I'm fine," she whispered. "The sadness you're feeling, it's overwhelming me." I crossed the room, placing my hands gently on her waist. "You don't have to hold it in. Not with me." Her head bowed, and one tear slid down her cheek. I reached up and caught it with my thumb. "I don't know why this hurts so much," she finally admitted. "Seeing Mary Bell. Even though I know you rejected her. Even though I know you chose me. There's this stupid part of me that wonders. What if you regret it? What if seeing her now reminds you of what you gave up?" "Nessa," I murmured, tilting her chin upward. "I don't regret a single moment. I chose you. I will keep choosing you. Every day in every life. I love you." She looked away, swallowing hard. "But she was your fated mate. And you are my forever mate," I said, my voice firm. "The bond I share with you is deeper than fate, it's choice. It's love. It's knowing who I want beside me through everything." Her breath caught. "I guess somewhere in the long ride here, I let my fear get the better of me. Then I'll just have to show you," I whispered. I leaned in and kissed her softly once, then again deeper. The kind of kiss that spoke vows without words. She melted into me, her arms wrapping around my neck, her body yielding to mine like we were made to fit together. That night we made love slowly, reverently. Every kiss, every touch, every whispered word a vow etched into skin and soul. "I love you," I said into the curve of her neck. "You're my home," she whispered. When sleep finally claimed us, we were tangled in each other, her heartbeat steady against my chest. The ache was gone. Nessa's POV Grant was right. There were no lingering stares. No whispered regrets. No tension between him and Mary Bell, not even the ghost of something that used to be. Watching them in the same room, both of them polite and cordial but nothing more, felt like breathing out after holding my lungs hostage for too long. I don't know why I let my insecurities get the best of me. Well, that's not entirely true. It's hard to silence old scars, the ones etched in shadows, especially when you've spent years being unseen. But Grant saw me. And last night he made sure I felt it, in every whispered word, every reverent kiss, every tender breath against my skin. He erased the last traces of doubt and replaced them with passion and unwavering devotion. I should have trusted him more. 2 days later, just after breakfast, Damien called a meeting. Xavier, Bailey, Grant, Marcus, and I were summoned to the PAC's private strategy room, a wide space with floor-to-ceiling windows, overlooking the pine forest just beyond the estate. The moment Damien mentioned the Leaders' Council meeting, a current of excitement jolted through me. This would be my first time attending one. The council only met twice a year, a gathering of alphas and betas from every PAC in our region. They discussed boundary disputes, shared resources, rogue threats, and anything that impacted the greater werewolf community. It was formal, prestigious, important, and I had a seat at that table now. My fingers fidgeted for a second as I followed the others into the room. Grant's hand brushed mine, a silent reassurance. I glanced at Bailey, who gave me a big grin, her amber eyes glowing with excitement. This would be her first Leaders' Council meeting, too. "Kick-ass girls taking names," she whispered, nudging my arm as we took our seats at the long, polished table. I laughed under my breath. "And kicking down doors." "Damn right," she replied. Damien stood at the head of the table beside his beta, Marcus. "Thank you all for coming," Damien began. "The next council convenes in 4 weeks, and it'll be hosted right here at Blackstone Ridge. We've received confirmation from most PACs already, including the Hollowstone, Crescent Pines, and Redmayne." Xavier nodded. "Are there security concerns?" "A few," Marcus grunted. "Rogue skirmishes near the southern ridges. We'll double border patrol during the meeting." Bailey leaned forward. "Will Luna Clarissa be attending from Hollowstone?" Damien smiled. "Yes. And you'll be the first female alpha in council history. Her and several other female betas are expecting both of you there," he said, nodding to Bailey and me. My stomach fluttered. Not with nerves, but pride. Damien continued outlining the agenda, passing around a packet of topics and talking points. My eyes skimmed each item with growing focus. Alliance training schedules, rogue tracking networks, the new trade routes. I took notes. Asked questions. I belonged here. Every so often, Grant would glance at me from across the table. With admiration. With quiet respect. And that meant everything. After the meeting adjourned, as everyone filtered out, Grant stayed behind to speak with Damien and Marcus. Bailey and I stood together at the tall windows, sipping from mugs of orange and white tea. "You were amazing," she said, elbowing me softly. "So were you," I replied. We shared a moment of reflection. 2 women who came from wildly different pasts, one rogue, one once a servant, but here we were, strong, mated, leading. "Loved." "You nervous?" she asked. "Not anymore," I said. "I think, for the first time in a long time, I feel ready." "Good." She grinned. Bailey's POV: we'd barely been settled a day at Damien's PAC before he called a meeting with the Silver Ridge leadership team. Xavier, Grant, Marcus, Nessa, and I all gathered in the North Wing's strategy room, the one with thick pine beams overhead and a panoramic view of the forest outside. As usual, Nessa came prepared. Her notepad was open, pen at the ready, eyes alert. She had that new beta spark, equal parts eager and serious. Grant kept sneaking glances at her, and I caught the ghost of a smile playing on his lips. I smirked to myself. Mating has softened our beta in all the right ways. Meanwhile, I sat more like a rogue who's gotten too used to comfort, legs crossed, sipping orange and white tea, mildly amused. I wasn't here to play politics. I was here to shake them up. Damien stood at the head of the table, flanked by his beta Marcus, both of them running through standard preparations for the Leaders' Council meeting. The biannual sit-down where all the big dog alphas and betas hashed out everything from rogue activity to inter-pack trade agreements. Historically, the meeting had always rotated between Blackstone Ridge and Silver Ridge. Because of course it had. As I listened to Damien recite the same old logistics, food, lodging, security patrols, blah blah blah, something itched in the back of my mind. I raised my hand like a sarcastic schoolgirl. "Question." Damien paused, amused. "Yes, Luna Bailey? Why not host the council meeting at Lawrence's PAC grounds this time?" That got some looks. I continued, tone even. "I mean, no shade to you or Xavier, but there's no actual rule saying it has to be between the two of you. And Lawrence. He's earned the support. He's healed after what happened to his mate and child. Hosting the council would show camaraderie, strength, and love. There was a short silence. Nessa looked impressed. Xavier. Well, Xavier looked like he wanted to kiss me then and there. Damien nodded thoughtfully. That's actually a brilliant suggestion. Marcus tilted his head. I like it. Symbolically, it sends a strong message. Through the bond, Xavier's voice slid into my thoughts like silk-draped heat. Have I told you recently how much I love you and how brilliant your mind is? Not often enough, I teased. Also, my body is equally brilliant, in case you forgot. I felt his grin through the bond before I even looked at him. From across the table, his eyes twinkled with both amusement and a bit of that low burn. The kind of look that said later tonight, he planned to fully explore the depths of my brilliance. Grant cleared his throat, snapping us both back to the moment. I'll coordinate with Adam, Lawrence's beta. We'll see if they're willing and able to host. Marcus nodded in agreement. 4 weeks gives us a decent window to secure the grounds and prep for the visiting entourages. Damien smiled. Let's make it happen. I think this will mean a lot to Lawrence. As the conversation turned to tactical plans and guest lodging capacities, I leaned back in my chair, content. Sure, I didn't always understand the thrill of formal leadership roles the way Nessa or Grant did, but I knew the value of empathy. And I knew the power of letting someone who's risen from ashes finally stand in the center of the fire, not as a victim, but as a leader. And if we shook up a few old traditions along the way, even better. Grant's POV when we reached out to Adam with the proposal to host the next Leaders' Council meeting at Northern Bluffs, his immediate response had been stunned silence, followed by genuine, wide-eyed joy. You're serious? He asked, disbelief melting into a grin. Completely, Marcus confirmed. It was Bailey's idea, I added. She thought it would be a meaningful show of solidarity. Lawrence has come a long way, and this is the perfect opportunity to reflect that. Adam's throat bobbed as he nodded. He'll be honored. I know he doesn't ask for much, but something like this. It'll mean more than any of us can guess. And it did. When Lawrence heard the news, he didn't speak right away. He just leaned back in his chair and took a slow breath, his hands steepled in front of his mouth. She thought of this? He finally asked. I nodded. Bailey did. Lawrence's eyes softened, full of the kind of gratitude that lived beyond words. Please thank her for me, Grant. And when she arrives, tell her I have something special for her. It's long overdue. Something about the way he said it made me curious, but I didn't press. From that moment forward, preparations moved like clockwork, but with purpose. Marcus, Adam, and I pulled long hours planning the logistics. We had a confirmed list of 27 pack leaders, plus guards, assistants, and emissaries. It would take everything Northern Bluffs had to offer, and then some, to accommodate the scale of the council. We assigned lodging quarters for each pack, taking into account past tensions or alliances. Some alphas preferred isolation. Others liked to be near their allies. We'd navigated more than a few personality landmines, but by week's end, the assignments were finalized. Omegas were briefed and rotated into shifts. Their training included formal serving etiquette, emergency protocols, and the kinds of questions not to ask a visiting alpha's snarky, entitled teenage daughter. Adam worked with his beta female to prepare the dining rotation and menu selections, from regional delicacies to staples like roasted meats, root vegetables, and seasonal breads. And of course, tea. Bailey had made it very clear there had better be, the good kind. Security was another matter. I want 105 warriors on constant rotation, I told Marcus. And I want aerial and perimeter surveillance doubled the day before arrivals. No surprises. I'll pull from Blackstone Ridge's second squad, Marcus said. We'll be covered. Even Adam looked impressed. You run your logistics like an alpha. I gave him a tight smile. Comes with cleaning up enough alpha messes. We laughed, but there was no mistaking the pride in his eyes. Hosting the council meant more than politics for Northern Bluffs. It meant healing. Restoration. Legitimacy. That night, as I reviewed the guest confirmations, I caught Nessa watching me from across the room. Her eyes were soft, lips curved in a smile that told me how proud she was of the work of this moment. Of me. I walked over, pressing a kiss to her temple. You're amazing, she whispered. I kissed her again. So are you. Soon, Bailey and Xavier would arrive with the twins in tow. The council would begin in less than a week. Bailey's POV Northern Bluffs stood like a castle carved into the mountainside, ancient, grand, and drenched in misty pine-scented air. As we pulled through the front gates, flanked by 2 armored sentries, I had to admit, Lawrence's pack knew how to make an entrance. Xavier drove with one hand on the wheel, the other resting on my thigh. Beside us in the back seat, Grant and Nessa sat relaxed but alert. Nessa had been poring over a binder of council protocols during the ride, but her hand was now quietly linked with Grant's. Cute. Mated beta nerds. As we rolled to a stop in the circular drive, the front doors of the pack house swung open with military precision. Lawrence, Adam, and a welcoming line of security detail and Omegas waited for us, each dressed in crisp gray and black uniforms trimmed in silver. It was a full-honor welcome. Alpha Xavier, Luna Bailey, Beta Grant, Beta Nessa, Lawrence greeted formally, then broke into a genuine smile. Welcome to Northern Bluffs. Looking sharp, Lawrence, I said, stepping out and giving him a wink. New tailor? Actually, yes, he grinned. Thank you for this opportunity. It means more than you know. Trust me, I said. I do know. After the greetings, the assigned Omegas stepped forward. We'll escort you to your quarters, one of them said to me with a slight bow. The same poise, the same practiced grace, Lawrence's staff were clearly trained well. It was strange not having Ariel and Malachi on my hip. This was my first night ever away from them. My heart already missed the sound of their gurgly giggles, the feel of their tiny fingers grabbing onto my curls. But I knew they were in the best hands possible. Caroline and Perry had practically threatened to chain me to the SUV if I didn't agree to leave the twins with them for the weekend. They'll be spoiled rotten, Perry promised. And you'll have time to focus without being spit up on. Caroline had clutched Ariel like her favorite handbag, and I knew there was no prying her away until the visit was over. Still, the ache of separation tugged at my chest even as I stepped inside this beautiful estate. Once inside, we were led down a long stone corridor and into a grand guest suite, high ceilings, floor-to-ceiling windows, and a private balcony that overlooked the shimmering valley below. Stunning. Xavier tossed our bags near the closet and walked over to the bed. I saw the flicker of concern in his eyes. You okay? He asked quietly. Yeah, I smiled. Just missing my littles already. He pressed a kiss to my forehead. They'll be okay. And we'll check in tonight. I nodded. Of course. Just then, a polite knock came from the door. Xavier opened it, and Lawrence stepped in holding a large black gift box wrapped with a silver satin ribbon. That was a bold ribbon choice for a man. Bailey, he said, stepping forward. This is for you. I let out an involuntary squeal and clapped my hands. A gift. For me. Xavier's head whipped around so fast I thought he might sprain something. He gave Lawrence a tight smile, one brow arched. Lawrence, the king of emotional recovery, only chuckled. Relax, Alpha. I'm still very much unmated. This is a thank you, not a proposal. I beamed, taking the box. Don't listen to him, Lawrence. He's just mad because you gave me a prettier box and he knows I love goodies in pretty boxes. Xavier grunted but said nothing. Inside, nestled in velvet, were custom-designed sneakers in deep black with iridescent silver detailing. Embroidered on the heel in white thread. B.A.B. My initials. Badass Bailey. I gasped. Oh, my moon goddess. And tucked underneath? Tiny matching sneakers for the twins, Ariel's with a pale pink shimmer, Malachi's with a sleek slate blue tint. Their names were etched on the tongues in fine thread. Perfection. These are beautiful, I whispered, blinking rapidly. I know how important your identity is to you, Lawrence said gently, and how deeply you love your children. I wanted to honor both. Thank you, I said, stepping forward and wrapping him in a tight hug. Seriously, this is one of the most thoughtful gifts I've ever received. I already know the exact outfit I'm wearing with these. Xavier cleared his throat. As long as it's one that keeps your legs mostly covered. Oh, now you care about fashion, I teased. Lawrence laughed. I'll leave you two to unpack. I'll have someone check in shortly to make sure you're settled. When the door closed, I turned toward Xavier with a grin. Jealous much? I'm not jealous, he said, voice low. I'm territorial. Is that so? I walked closer and pressed against him, sneakers still in hand. Then maybe you should have embroidered your name on my clothes a long time ago. He growled and grabbed me by the waist. Maybe I'll do more than that tonight. Oh, is that a promise or a threat? Both. I kissed him quickly and whispered, let's see who can keep up with who. Nessa's POV quarters at Northern Bluffs were tucked into the east wing of the pack house, where the mountains kissed the skyline and the scent of pine drifted lazily through the open windows. Everything in the room felt like it belonged in a storybook: warm honey-hued wood, deep forest green accents, and thick quilts that held the faint scent of cedar and sunlight. As soon as I stepped inside, I felt my shoulders ease. The stillness here wasn't empty, it was welcoming. I stepped over to the large bay window and took in the view. A soft fog was curling over the trees below, golden sunlight scattering like fireflies between the branches. Northern Bluffs was breathtaking, quiet and majestic, like it held centuries of secrets and strength. The kind of place that didn't just offer you rest, it offered you clarity. Behind me, Grant placed our bags beside the bed and stretched his arms above his head. This place is incredible, he murmured, walking over to stand beside me. You like it? I nodded, smiling softly. It's stunning. I can't believe we get to stay here. He wrapped his arms around my waist from behind and rested his chin on my shoulder. You deserve the best. I wanted you to have this experience, not just the beauty of this place, but the role you now hold. I turned in his arms, meeting his gaze. I still can't believe it sometimes. That I'm standing here as your beta. That I get to be part of something bigger. Grant's fingers brushed along my jaw. You've earned every part of it. You've worked harder than anyone I know. This wasn't just my choice, it was the obvious one. Warmth bloomed in my chest. He always knew how to make me feel seen. Later, after unpacking together and laughing about how many pairs of socks Grant had managed to pack, we sprawled on the plush sofa nestled beneath the window. The late afternoon sun made the room glow gold, and the mountain breeze carried in a hint of wildflowers and snowmelt. I curled into Grant's side, my cheek resting on his chest. His hand moved in slow, soothing circles across my back. We didn't need to speak. The silence was full of understanding. Eventually I murmured, I've never been part of something like this before. Sitting in on a leaders' council. I was an Omega. And now I'll have a seat at the table. A voice. Grant tilted his head down and kissed my forehead. You've always had a voice, Nessa. Now they'll finally hear it. A soft smile curled my lips. I'll make you proud. You already do. The sky outside faded into dusk. Stars began to poke through the navy horizon as the wind hummed softly through the trees. I thought about the meeting to come, the powerful alphas and betas I'd sit beside. And for the first time, I didn't feel intimidated. I felt honored. Because I wasn't just attending as a guest, I was walking in as a leader. As Grant's equal. As Silver Ridge's female beta. And I would carry that title with pride. Bailey's POV, the dining hall of Northern Bluffs, was glowing. Chandeliers sparkled like starlight. The long oak table was dressed in silver and black linens, and candles flickered gently down its length, casting a warm, amber hue. Platters of roasted meats, root vegetables, and freshly baked bread lined the table's center. It smelled like heaven. Nessa and I were ushered in beside Xavier and Grant, but before we could even take our seats, we were intercepted by a small crowd of Lunas and female betas, their eyes wide and sparkling with curiosity. Bailey Paxton, a Luna from River Hollow, said as she took my hands. We've heard so much about you. It's been forever since a female alpha sat at one of these gatherings. Another beta female leaned in. Honestly, we were beginning to think the council forgot women exist outside of kitchens and birthing wings. I laughed and caught Nessa's amused glance. Well, I'm here to remind them. Are the rumors true? Asked Luna Madeline from Iron Crest, her eyes dancing. Did you beat 6 elite warriors in training last month? I gave her a cheeky grin. 7. But who's counting? The women burst into laughter and moved in closer, eager now. Nessa stepped up beside me and was quickly drawn into the circle. You're the new beta female of Silver Ridge, right? One of the women asked her. Nessa nodded. Just recently appointed. Well, about damn time. Someone cheered from the back. I swear, said a tall, sharp-eyed beta from Pine Hollow. "The men act like we're made of fine china, when half of us are sharper than their damn claws." "Cheers to that," I said, lifting my wine goblet. The other women followed suit, and together we toasted, not just to strength but to presence. Across the room, the males had clustered near the fireplace, their tones low and easy. I could see Xavier holding court near a few alpha peers, Lawrence, Damien, a younger alpha from Red Mesa, and a silver-templed elder from Rain Valley. I watched as Alpha Mitchell from Red Mesa leaned over and asked something. Xavier chuckled in response. "I wonder what they're talking about," Nessa murmured beside me. As if on cue. "How's it being with a female alpha?" Mitchell had asked. "Who has the upper hand at home?" Xavier gave a mock-serious shrug and said, "Happy wife, happy life. As long as Bailey's happy, there's peace." The room roared with laughter. Grant added with a grin, "The real question isn't who's in charge, it's who's allowed to think they are." More laughter. Even Damien lifted his glass and added, "The last time I tried to argue with my mate, she moved my entire office across the pack house and didn't tell me where she put it." "I went a week without finding my favorite pen," someone moaned. "And that's the thing," the elder alpha chimed in, wagging a finger. "You never want a pissed-off Luna or a mate. You think rogue alphas are dangerous? Try an offended woman with a bond." Everyone at the table lost it. Xavier glanced across the room and met my gaze, his eyes shining with pride and love. He raised his glass toward me and mouthed my Luna. I smirked and raised mine in return. My alpha. As dinner continued, the air in the hall buzzed with something far more meaningful than politics. There was camaraderie and change, and a new rhythm rising among the old traditions. And for the first time in a long time, the table felt balanced, strong voices from both sides of the bond finally echoing in unison. Grant's POV: the morning air was crisp and quiet as we entered the Grand Council chamber of Northern Bluffs. A fire crackled in the massive stone hearth, filling the room with warmth that stood in contrast to the gravity of the meeting. The long rectangular table stretched nearly the full length of the room, flanked on all sides by alphas and betas from every pack in the region. Lawrence sat at the head of the table on one end, regal and stoic, while his beta Adam anchored the other side with equal command. Nessa and I sat beside Xavier and Bailey. Though it was Nessa's first Leaders' Council as a beta, she carried herself with quiet dignity, her eyes sharp, ears attentive. The meeting began without incident. Discussions moved through territory agreements, trade alliances, and recent border patrol challenges. That was until Alpha Gage and Alpha Harlow got into it over a disputed hunting ground that had been in question since last winter. It was nothing unusual, posturing ego politics. Alpha Mitchell from Red Mesa stood to discuss the alarming rise in rogue attacks along his southern borders. His tone was urgent. "They're bolder," he said. "Coordinated. Not like the loners we used to deal with." He barely got the words out when we heard it. Screams. High-pitched, terrified, blood-curdling screams. The entire room went still. Then came the sound of crashing wood shouts, the shriek of wolves shifting in panic outside. We were on our feet in seconds. Chairs crashed backward. Lawrence bolted toward the front entrance, Adam at his side. The rest of us followed in a blur of movement. As we burst through the large double doors of the council building, we were met with a scene I'll never forget. Chaos. Rogues, hundreds of them, spilled through the gates like a black tide. Their eyes wild, their fur matted and caked in blood and mud. Many were already shifted, snapping at anything that moved. Others were in the process, tearing through the guards, overpowering them with brute numbers. I had never seen this many rogues in one coordinated assault. The Northern Bluffs security team fought fiercely, but they were overwhelmed. Their formations collapsed quickly under the sheer weight of bodies crashing through their defenses. Screams filled the air, some human, some wolf, followed by snarls and the wet, sickening sound of flesh being ripped from bone. A young Omega sprinted across the courtyard, only to be pounced on mid-run by a rogue with dark brown fur. He tore her throat out in a spray of blood before moving on to the next. Another rogue slammed one of the guards into a pillar so hard the wolf's skull caved in on impact. He slumped down like a ragdoll. I turned just in time to see Bailey's lips twist into a vicious grin. "Well," she said, her voice low and almost gleeful, "things just got interesting." Then she shouted, "Nessa on my left!" In a flash of light and energy, both women shifted mid-run. Bailey's wolf was massive, gleaming obsidian with streaks of silver running along her flanks. Nessa's was lean and swift, her light gray coat practically glowing under the pale sky. They launched themselves into the fray. Bailey hit a rogue like a battering ram, slamming him into a tree with such force that the trunk cracked. Nessa darted in beside her, a blur of movement, raking her claws across the soft underbelly of a rogue mid-lunge. Blood sprayed the grass. "Bailey!" Xavier roared, shifting before the word had even fully left his mouth. His massive black wolf barreled forward to cover her side. I didn't hesitate. Leo surged forward. My bones cracked as I shifted and took my place guarding Xavier's flank. Rogues surged like a wave. It was hard to tell who was where, just snarls, blood, flashing teeth, and fur. They came at us relentlessly. One leaped for Xavier's exposed side, and I intercepted midair, slamming the rogue to the ground and tearing into his neck until I heard the wet pop of his windpipe snapping. The battle raged across the compound. Northern Bluffs was on fire. Quite literally. One of the barracks was ablaze, smoke curling into the sky. A group of young Omegas had barricaded themselves inside the healer's hut, but 2 rogues were clawing at the door. I tried to reach them, but I was blocked by 3 ferals with blood dripping from their jaws. They circled me, eyes wild. Leo growled low, and when they lunged, we tore them apart. Limbs and fur flew as we slashed, bit, and clawed our way through. Bailey and Nessa were deep in the center of it. Nessa's movements were surgical, fast and graceful. She dodged a swipe from a rogue 3 times her size, twisted, and sank her fangs into his haunch, then darted away as Bailey leaped over her to deliver the killing blow. Xavier was a blur of black, holding the line with terrifying strength. I'd never seen him move like that, pure fury, pure alpha. But we were still outnumbered. Everywhere I looked, someone was bleeding or dying. The courtyard was painted red. I saw Adam get tackled by 2 rogues at once, only to rise moments later, soaked in blood but alive. I lost count of the number of bodies we took down. 10, 15, or more. But it wasn't enough. More kept coming. And behind the fog of battle, in the very far distance beyond the tree line, I saw something else. A figure. Still. Watching. A man. Not shifted. Covered in black, hood drawn low. Watching us fight for our lives like he was waiting for something. Leo snarled. Who the hell was that? I didn't have time to find out. Another rogue broke through the line, and I lunged forward, teeth bared.